You're listening to the Allman Report on NewsTalkSTL.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Allman Report this beautiful Wednesday evening here on NewsTalkSTL. 101.9 and 94.1. Good evening this evening, everyone. Really enjoying your comments on the Facebook page. I know you're doing it on X as well, so all down the line, YouTube, you name it. I really appreciate all of you liking and sharing the show as well, wherever you happen to be. If you're listening on the radio, hard to do, except telling everybody to listen, no matter what parking lot you're in or what have you. So I'd appreciate that, too. So good evening, everyone. And, yeah, it looks like we're going to have a rocket show here because Rick Pogue's going to be joining us. Doug Giles is going to make a special Wednesday night appearance only because, man, I am confounded, absolutely confounded by this sudden fake news effort. If it's true, it's terrible. To insinuate somehow that evangelicals and Christians and people of religion are not going to be voting, which is astounding to me. It is confounding to me. And if you are Christian or an evangelical and you're not voting, you don't have an excuse, so don't bother with me. You can talk to the hand. I don't know. Whatever. So we'll talk more about that. By the way, anybody care whether Donald Trump called Putin a few times? Okay, no, I don't either. So we got that out of the way. And we also have evidence, again, anecdotally, that the Trump victory in 2016 is near. You know why? Because Tim Walz is saying that we need to abolish the Electoral College. They're that scared of a repeat of 2016. I told you already that there's a good possibility Trump can lose the popular vote. Happens, did in 2016, but win the Electoral College. But keep in mind, the popular vote doesn't matter in this country. It doesn't matter. It matters to the degree that you amass enough votes to get enough Electoral College votes. I get all that. But the popular vote nationally doesn't matter at all. There's nothing in any way, shape, or form that is in any way, shape, or form relevant to the election. And that's how the Founding Fathers put it. Anybody who has questions about the veracity of Electoral College, to me, is an idiot. And I don't mean to be name-calling, but my goodness gracious, I see this Pew Research poll. And this was from August 26th through September 2nd. They conducted the poll. And it found that more than 6 in 10 Americans would prefer to see the winner of the presidential election be the candidate who wins the popular vote. Now, this is evidence that 6 in 10 Americans are uneducated in civics. They apparently were not taught anything about the Electoral College in school. And so when you're a person who proposes abolishing the Electoral College, you're completely and totally uneducated as to the American way. It's just, there is no other answer but the Electoral College. It's like people who think the word nuclear is okay because it's just a way people say it. Well, no, it's not. It's not nuclear. It's nuclear. There's no other way. And there's no other way of talking about our presidential election than through the Electoral College. It exists. It'll never be abolished. And if it is, say goodbye to this country. But it will never be. It can't be. I do have to acknowledge that there were some Republicans At one point, and this was, I can't remember whether this was during Romney's time, who were hitting me up for this kind of divided vote. Because they were worried until Trump came along that Democrats kept on starting every election with like 248 electoral college votes because of the way the states were voting. And so the Republicans, instead of actually getting somebody with some guts, getting somebody with some energy, like Trump in 2016, they thought, well, maybe if we just change the system a little bit and say, well, okay, we'll just divide the electoral college votes in each state. It won't be like winner take all. We'll just divide them. And some states, as a matter of fact, do. But that's what they wanted. Republicans wanted that because they were afraid of losing. But people, and like the Democrats now who support, and the 6 in 10 Americans who support the abolishing of the electoral college vote, you're just a bunch of sore losers who want to manipulate the system and change the way we score presidential elections. That's not sufficient. It's not intelligent. It's not acceptable in any way, shape, or form. So that's just, but again, it's proof that there are a lot of people right now who are afraid, and rightly so, that Donald Trump is going to win his second term, and he's going to win his second term by winning the Electoral College, which basically is the very definition of winning. That's how it goes. So now people are constantly trying to manipulate the ways we vote, and we're getting, of course, with the mail-in voting and utilizing COVID to do that, and then we're getting the first inklings from hurricane-ravaged North Carolina that they're starting to try to manipulate the way these Carolina hurricane victims are voting. And these election officials had a meeting, and they decided they were going to change certain things about the voting process in North Carolina. Now, some of these sound like they might be positive for us, like expanding voting sites, extending voting hours, absentee ballot flexibility. But it's not really all it's cracked up to be in terms of just how things are going. Kevin Corke did a report on this. I want you to listen to what he had to say about what's really going on here, because on its face, yeah, extending sites, doing this kind of thing, but there's something about the way people are now being allowed to vote in North Carolina where they can just drop a ballot off anywhere, not even in the county where they vote. There's something up with that, and I guarantee you North Carolina election officials would not be changing the way people vote. And by the way, that's coming in Florida too, in the aftermath of Milton, as we continue to pray for our brothers and sisters in Florida, as this hurricane is in its very, very midst right now and will continue to do so overnight and wreak havoc. These storm surges are insurmountable and unsurvivable, and we just hope everything is going to be okay. Tampa, Sarasota, the ones that are mainly going to be affected, Fort Myers as well and beyond. So Kevin Corke explained what these changes are going to be and the ramifications of them.
Evening, Jesse. They're talking about major changes in the voting process. Now, this is, they say, designed to help displaced voters in the Tar Heel state not only cast their ballots, but also make sure they have their voices heard this November. However, some Republicans are expressing deep reservations about the plan because of concerns about voter integrity. Now, the changes were approved by unanimous vote by the bipartisan board.
And keep in mind, the voter integrity element of this is important because while they are expanding the hours of voting, expanding the sites and everything else, they're not actually putting in some of the checks and balances required to know that a ballot has the veracity it should have. So, yeah, they're allowing people to vote, making it easier for people to vote, but also making it easier for people to vote illegally if they want to.
Just 10 days before early voting begins in the battleground state, and even as mail-in voting is already underway. Now, a couple of the changes I want to tell you about, including this: voters in the 13 counties that have been heavily affected by Hurricane Helene will now have more ways to obtain and deliver absentee ballots. By the way, more storms coming possibly. Voters in those counties will have longer to apply for absentee ballots. They'll be allowed to drop their ballots off anywhere in the state, not just in their home county. There will also be teams that will be sent to storm relief centers to help register more voters and, you guessed it, collect more ballots.
Yeah, there you go. The assistant teams. That's going to be what really does it. Now, where do you think these assistant teams are coming from? They're not coming from the counties necessarily where there are a lot of Trump voters. They're coming from Raleigh, Durham. They're coming from the urban areas. They're coming from the state. And so that's where they're able to kind of create this idea that, well, we're expanding sites, we're doing all this kind of stuff, but then they sneak in the assistant teams. They're going to go to all these shelters and register people and provide ballots to them on the spot. So that is fraught with fraud, fraught with trouble. President Trump did win North Carolina in 2020, and the reality is what they're trying to do, and it's taken them a while to come up with this system, but the system obviously has the kind of holes that could benefit anybody who wants to help rig an election.
What's more, the county boards will also be able to, by a bipartisan majority, hire poll workers from other counties and then move them all around the state to ensure there are enough experienced workers at each voting site. Now, the problem is, say critics, Jesse, we don't know where they're going to draw these poll workers from. And with ballots being able to be dropped off anywhere in the state, how can anyone accurately contest voter turnout discrepancies, say, in different counties? And keep this in mind, North Carolina was one of the last states to report back in 2020. It took them 10 days to certify the general election, despite being a relatively small state. Now, I can also add this very quickly. President Trump's team, the Trump-Vance campaign, issued a statement tonight asking for more access for North Carolinians. They say it is super important that the people who've already suffered from the storm don't lose their right to take part in this important election.
Yeah, and so the Trump team is supportive, as you and I are. I want these people to vote. But what happened is they're like, well, okay, well, Trump said he wants more people to vote. We're going to go ahead and give it to him. And we're going to give it to him through this janky way of attempting to manipulate it through poll workers and through these assistance teams and everything else. So you can see the game being played here. You can see the passive aggressivity of this approach saying, well, you guys wanted more people to vote? We'll have more people voting, but we're going to do it the way we want to do it with our assistance teams and everything else. And in my opinion, yes, we're getting a little bit of what we want in terms of the people being allowed to vote. But you know, as Kevin Cork just outlined here, you know all of the ways in which they're going to try and manipulate this baby. And they're going to do it, in my opinion, with these poll workers and these so-called assistance teams. So that is the latest update on how they are manipulating this hurricane. And I guarantee you by the time Florida's done, oh, Lordy, I don't know how this is going to work. And I don't know whether this is going to hurt or help Democrats or Republicans. I'm not really necessarily concerned about that right now in Florida, obviously, because I'm concerned about the people down there, and we'll follow up on the election stuff later because that's going to be a story. And I never think it's too early to judge the ramifications or assess the ramifications of what could happen in a situation like this as it relates to voting, because I guarantee you, just like it was with COVID or any kind of disaster or whatever, the people who want to manipulate these elections are always thinking of ways to capitalize on it in a negative way, not a positive way. That you can almost be assured of. You can also be assured of the old school experience at Schneider's True Value Hardware there in Old Town St. Peter's. There for more than 100 years. And it's just old school. It's just the kind of hardware store that you used to run into as a kid. Of course they have the popcorn. Of course they have the sawdust on the floors. Of course they have every little nook, cranny filled with nuts, bolts, and you name it. And they have the tools and they have everything else available for you at Schneider's True Value Hardware. The owner is Jerry Schneider, great guy. And he and Charlie are there on the premises to help you because it's a family-run operation. So you've got the family there, overalls and all, ready to help you out and ready to give you offering of a wide range of tools, products, and expert advice, the kind of expert advice that you want and sometimes don't get at the bigger box places. But it's always great to be able to support a family-owned business. And on top of that, it's really great to be able to support a business that supports your brand of America and your brand of common sense conservative radio. It's Schneider's True Value Hardware, truevalue.com/Schneiders. Hey, coming up, a cringy appearance by Kamala Harris on the Colbert Show. And that's going to be followed by our usual Wednesday discussion with the guru, the business guru of the Allman Report, the great and powerful and mighty and amazing Rick Pogue. This is the Allman Report.
You're listening to the Allman Report on NewsTalkSTL.
Good evening, everyone, and happy Wednesday to all of you. This is Common Sense Radio, and it's the Allman Report, people. And this happened. You can't find every day seems to be one more cringier moment for Kamala Harris than the next. And wait till you hear how it turns out, even though Bill Whitaker supposedly did a decent job in that 60 Minutes interview, the people who run the show there at 60 Minutes absolutely faked one of her answers, and they've been caught. and I'll follow up on that. Anyway, Kamala Harris appears on Colbert's show, and this is, as one person on X, the Trump War Room actually called it this, you're simply not prepared for the level of cringe.
One of the old saws is they just want somebody they can have a beer with. So would you like to have a beer with me so I can tell people what that's like? Okay. This was... Now, we asked ahead of time because I can't just be giving a drink to the Vice President of the United States without asking. You asked for Miller High Life. You asked for Miller High Life.
She asked for Miller High Life, which I gotta give her a little bit of props for that because, Miller High Life's not a bad beer. But I don't think for a second she drinks Miller High Life.
You asked for Miller High Life.
Not a second.
Miller High Life. I'm just curious.
Okay, the last time I had beer was at a baseball game with Doug.
So cheers. There
cheers.
Yeah, is that the night that Doug slapped you silly for smiling at the vendor? Because, Doug kind of does that. Unbelievable. This just is... Ooh. Oh, hey, Rick Pogue. What's going on, brother? Hey.
Happy Wednesday.
You guys have Miller Miller High Life at Johnny's, don't you?
We've got AB products there.
Oh, okay.
We do have other products in when we open the train station bar outside. The canned products.
Yeah.
We had Coors and some other stuff there. I don't know if we got Miller. We might have Miller there, but we primarily go with AB products on beer.
Nope. Nobody drinks Miller High Life in Jefferson County, dude. So don't worry.
And I think the last beer she actually had was about 10 minutes before Colbert.
So. I know. I do have a quick story about Miller High. I was in Quick Trip once. And, back in the day, let's put it this way. Black people love Miller High Life. That was when I was growing up. I went to school with 80% black people. I was in an urban area, and Miller High Life was the ruler. It was like in those clear bottles, and it was kind of like that. That was the jam for a lot of people. So I'm in this Quick Trip, and this black dude comes in, grabs a 6-pack of Miller High Life. And I just strike up a conversation with him. I say, oh, man, they changed the bottles because they used to be a little darker or whatever. I don't know. And he goes, I don't know, man. And then so we just kind of talked about Miller High Life being kind of one of these storied beers back in the day, even though a lot of us never drank it. And then he cashes out. He's on his way out. He's got 6 beers. He goes, you want one? I'm like, no, dude, that's all right. I'm good. But the guy was so nice to offer me one of his 6 beers.
That was very
What
nice.
a man, what a man.
Yeah, well, with Kamala Harris, maybe she does like Miller High Life, but at least with Kamala Harris, one thing she's always consistent on. She'll always give you a non-answer or the safest answer.
Yeah, right.
Not necessarily the truth.
Yeah. Well,
everything she answers.
I'll tell you, last time we talked, we talked about it looks like this inevitability of a Trump win, but who knows what's going to be happening with the manipulation of voting in North Carolina and probably eventually to a certain degree in Florida. We shall see. My priority, I know, and yours is too, is thinking about the safety of these people in Florida right now, and not necessarily the outcome of the election as it relates to them. So, I want to put our priorities in order here. But you never know. But the inevitability. I mean, yesterday I turned people on to 2 analysts. One is Steve Kornacki, and he's with NBC, who broke Kristen Welker's dreams with facts about the Electoral College. And then this other dude, this Etten guy over on CNN, they were crunching numbers, and they said, man, this is looking like the possibility of Trump maybe even winning not 270, but 312 Electoral College votes.
Yeah, I've been telling people for the last week, I think he'll get 300. I think he'll get 300 plus. And of course, everybody, I hope you're right. Well, I mean, we both have our internal meters, right, and what we believe is going to happen. But I just look at the facts and I look at where everybody's at and all the different pieces of the puzzle that go into it. But I don't know. I think it's going to be similar to what happened against Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
Got to remember, her own party doesn't like her. They pretend like they like her, but by and large, right, most voters do not like her.
Yeah. Yeah, and they also pointed out there's a dissatisfaction with America factor. And
Yeah.
it is even lower than it was in 2020. And Trump lost in 2020, at least according to the people who think he lost. But anyway, but the numbers dissatisfied with America were at about 28%. They're at 25 now. And this guy said nobody who's an incumbent or part of an incumbency wins another term with those kinds of low numbers. It just has never happened.
No, I agree with that. And, you remember Biden, what was Biden up at this point in 2020? He was up 5 or 6 points, I think, in the polls. These national polls, if they're showing a dead heat now, she's behind.
Yeah.
And I think she's behind a lot.
Oh, yeah.
I really do.
I do, too.
And I think we're going to see that.
Yeah. All right. So I wanted to ask you, since you're the business guru, and then I want to ask you. Well, I'll ask you now about the voting, because I'm going to have Doug Giles on later and do a deep dive into it. But I'm hearing this, and I don't know whether this is just propaganda designed to demoralize Christians in this country. I think that a lot of propaganda is designed not only to influence sometimes, but to demoralize as well. And the Drudge Report, for instance, traffics in that all the time. But you notice this story coming out. It's because Pew did a poll of Christians and said a lot of them are not going to be voting this year. And a lot of evangelicals. And I am first of all, I don't believe that. And secondly, I don't believe that if you are a person who calls yourself a Christian, that you would possibly abdicate your duty to vote in this fashion.
I agree. And I disagree with what they're saying. And number one, absolutely it's political and it's designed to demoralize the right. They would throw their mothers over the side of a ship to demoralize the right. So evangelicals, I hate this term at the end of the day, but at the end of the day, they're going to come out. They're going to vote for Trump. Okay. Trump's position, I guess the big deal is he's come out and he said, he will veto a national abortion ban. Well, he should, because he's always been consistent on this. It is a state issue. Okay. The Supreme Court made the right decision and sent the abortion decision back to the states where it should be. It's where it always should have been. And I think that's all he's saying. And the left is seeing this as an opportunity to, get everybody lathered up and upset and hopefully get more Trump voters to sit at home. I don't think it's going to work.
I don't either. And adjacent to this, you'll notice about 6 weeks ago, the big thing was all about how President Trump, a lot of people who are in the evangelical crowd, and I'm gonna ask you about that word because I can't stand it either, and I don't know why I'm using it. I hate it. I'm sorry about that. But the Christian population doubts President Trump's pro-life cred, and I'm thinking, how could you because he doesn't support a federal abortion ban. I'm thinking, how could you possibly doubt the credibility of a guy who did what Republicans only jawed about for decades and finally not only appointed the judges, but remember, he fought to win the presidency in order to appoint those judges. So keep in mind, if it were not for his energy and his own godly type of commitment to this country, we would never have had the justices on the Supreme Court to do that. The Republicans before him were a bunch of lazy, shiftless people who were losing all the time, never achieved it, and he finally did. So how could you possibly, in any way, shape, or form, doubt the pro-life credibility of Donald J. Trump? Beyond me.
You can agree. You cannot, unless you believe everything the media says and your source of information is CNN, MSNBC, or any of those alphabet liars. And I think that's what they count on. The word evangelical to them is, it's foreign to them. Religion is foreign. To them, it's like this thing in a box that they can't understand. They poke a stick at it. Obviously not all Democrats, but the elites on the left, the progressives, they hate religion. So they're gonna use topics like this and anything they can to try and get people to sit at home, demoralized. But no, you cannot doubt the facts. Look what Donald Trump has done. I mean, you just listed a bunch of it, and yet they still, because they count on people getting their source of information from some other network other than what's telling the truth. they just keep pushing the fact. And I'll tell you, I have a lot of friends who don't consider themselves political, and I'm surprised how many of them believe this nonsense, this crap that you hear. It's like, are you serious? It's mind blowing. So unfortunately, the media, the national media still has a lot of power and influence over I don't say weak-minded, but the ignorant, the self-imposed ignorant, people who are not willing to educate themselves just a little bit when they have the World Wide Web at their fingertips.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people who are Christian, and I don't know one of them who calls themselves an evangelical.
I don't either. I hate that word. Well, that's a word that was applied to all of us horrible people on the right who love God and choose to follow God and live their lives according to his fashion. And that's how they view that. Everybody's got to have a label, and that's their label for us. So that's another reason I hate using that word, because I know it didn't come from our side.
No. Well, and plus, I think it comes from the way back in the day, the Pat Robertson or Oral Roberts of the world, and therefore they became the very symbols of Christians, as if they were the only kinds of Christians in this country. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a ridiculous name, and I think you're so right. Don't use it because it's not from our place. I know. All right, and yesterday I dealt with the Mark Cuban and this other dude who the guy who co-founded LinkedIn and everything else, Freeland, who are creating CEOs for Kamala. And as a businessman yourself, and I know you talk to a lot of CEOs, a lot of them from small businesses, but also from big ones. How's it possible? What do you think the motivation of these CEOs would be to support a Kamala Harris?
Well, Mark Cuban's in a category of his own, and I put him in I'm so jealous of Donald Trump, I will lie to the entire world to help Kamala Harris. I admire Mark Cuban. He's got amazing life accomplishments. He really does. He's a brilliant guy, which tells you even more. He knows what he's saying about Donald Trump is nonsense. He knows that's nonsense. So he's an anomaly. He's kind of in his own category. But these other CEOs, if you look at them, most of them are Silicon Valley CEOs. These companies that didn't get to where they are by rolling their sleeves up and getting their hands dirty. It's more of tradition. Look at the last election. Look how much Silicon Valley helped with get Biden elected, or get the votes he needed, and deter people on our side from voting by using Facebook and Twitter at that time and all this other stuff. So I don't know. I think it's a combination of maybe a little bit of fear from their side. They're not afraid of Donald Trump. They know if they understand the value of a dollar and they understand their business and basic economics 101, they know Harris is the wrong person to put in the White House.
Yeah.
They know that. So there's other motivations. There has to be. They're being promised something, or there's stuff going on behind the scenes we don't even know about. I believe that wholeheartedly. We saw that when they pulled Joe Biden out and said, you cannot run anymore. And they're acting like it was his choice and that he put his country before himself. No, Obama and Pelosi and all these people got together and they said, you're out. And I believe that's what happened. And they probably leveraged him. He probably didn't want to, and they probably leveraged him somehow. That's what those people do.
Well, and I figured, too, that it had a lot to do with the fact that, as you mentioned, the Silicon Valley factor, that a lot of these guys don't actually want to do business in the United States of America. They want to make all their chips. They want to do all their stuff overseas.
Great point.
And so they love the high corporate tax rate, and they love the fact that there's overregulation here, because it gives them an excuse to go overseas and do their pennies on the dollar manufacturing. And I don't think the government ought to control everything that a corporation should do here overseas beyond. But the U.S. government, in regulating commerce, though, can make it much easier for businesses to do business in the United States of America by cutting regulation, reducing corporate taxes, that kind of thing, to make that playing field an offer you can't refuse. But these guys don't want an offer they can't refuse. They want to be able to refuse this, and they want somebody to keep those taxes high. In fact, Kamala Harris says she's going to increase the corporate tax rate, and there'll be more regulation. And they love that because then they can say, see, we can't do business here in America. We just do it overseas.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. Well, they know Donald Trump, if he wins, they know he's going to help their business. What they don't know is if they support Donald Trump now, what the wrath will be if she wins. So to simplify it, that my point there, whose butt do you kiss right now? It's safe to kiss her butt because Donald Trump can help them no matter what.
Yeah.
So, but if she wins and they were supporting him, they might have something to deal with there. So
Right on.
I think they're just laying groundwork for in case she wins. But
Yeah,
they don't want her to win. I don't believe that for a second. You can't be a CEO of any corporation and want more of what we've got in the last 3
I
years.
know you. It just defies any kind of common sense. All right, buddy, tell me about. I know Johnny's Hideout has big things going on every single day. Live music, local musicians. You got 40 TVs to watch, NFL, college football, whatever. It's a great place to watch those games. Settle in on a beer and some wings or that brand new pizza, whatever. But tell me about October 18th because I'm going to be down there. I'm planning the trip to, which is not far, by the way. It's 10 minutes from 270 in Gravois. But I'm planning to be there on Friday the 18th. What's going on there?
Well, we have a great musical guest that night, or we're hosting a Bobby Ford band. And I don't know, I compare him kind of to people that don't know and haven't heard his music, kind of like the Zach Brown band, very similar.
Yeah.
They have a fiddle too. They are outstanding. Bobby Ford will be out there again. He comes out probably 4 times a year, and always a huge crowd, always a great time. We'll have a couple hundred people on that patio at least. But it's such a good time, and he's a great human being too. And I'll make sure you meet those guys too.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that. But if you're in the area, or even if you're not in the area, and you want to come, you've been wanting to come down to Johnny's, try our pizzas. They're phenomenal. This would be a perfect night to come down and do that because you get to see an amazing band.
Yeah, and the weather's always great no matter whether you're outdoors or not because they've got heat, they got fires, they got everything. So it's a nice, cozy place to enjoy your fall as well. So you know how St. Louisans love to be outdoors in the fall, and this is how it's going to roll. So
all right, we got
buddy.
bonfires outside, and so come on down.
Yeah, jhideout.com is where you can find it, or check it out on Facebook, too, because there's always something going on. Johnny's Hideout STL on Facebook. Rick Pogue, it's always a pleasure every week to chime in with you, man. Thanks for your brilliance, buddy, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your night.
My honor, brother. Love you.
All right, love you, too. That is the great Rick Pogue. All right, coming up, people, 60 Minutes gets busted. I mean, after all this, I thought Bill Whitaker did a pretty good job in his questioning of Kamala Harris, but keep in mind, he was just doing his job. So he was doing his job, just like this Tony Duckapill guy over at ABC, where they declared that his interview with this racist pro-Hamas dude was not up to their standards because he asked tough questions of this racist pro-Hamas guy. So we had 2 people just doing their jobs, but it didn't matter. Bill Whitaker did his job, but then the producers and people who run the show decided to jack it up and change a few things, and I'll prove it to you on the other side here. This is the Allman Report on News Talk STL.
You're listening to the Allman Report on NewsTalkSTL.
Good evening, everyone. Happy Wednesday to all of you. As the Allman Report on NewsTalkSTL, checking out the podcast, newstalkstl.com/Allman. That's where you can find the podcast download for yourself. And, of course, we're sticky everywhere, Facebook and X and YouTube and Truth Social and beyond. Hey, guys, also at newstalkstl.com, we have a chance for you to win tickets to see the brand new thriller. And it might be up your alley. It's called Conclave, and it's about some deep darkness in the Catholic Church. It's a drama. It's a pretty good one, too. It's an indie film, and you're going to like it, and we've got a way for you to get tickets to see it for free because we have an October 21 screening. That's Monday coming up, and so you'll be able to find a way to get yourself some tickets. Also, you can find a way to help our brothers and sisters in the hurricane-ravaged area. We've got some direction for you there as well. All right, so check this out. 60 Minutes did a pretty good interview. Bill Whitaker with Kamala Harris asked her some tough questions, but it's not like, you know, the guy needs a Pulitzer for this. He's just doing his job. And the reason why it stood out that Bill Whitaker was seemingly a better journalist than others is because so many other journalists suck and are biased. And so the ones who actually even come across as remotely fair are made to be heroes because they're doing their job. And so, you know, you look at all the people in law enforcement and our military who do such great things every single day and are never lauded for just doing their jobs, which is hard enough. And then you look at these journalists who do a couple things right, and they're like, well, man, he's the next Walter Cronkite. It's like, well, not really, but that's all right. I'm not taking too much away from him. I am going to take a lot away from 60 Minutes, though, because, listen, Kamala Harris is so bad at this. She doesn't have a brain. And I don't mean to be gratuitous about this. I don't mean to be mean, but there's no other way for me to put it. I mean, after a while, you talk to somebody, you're listening to somebody like this, whether it be people you work with or whether it, I don't know, who just can't string sentences together and constantly look like they're completely and totally confused. And again, I'm not trying to be petty or I'm not trying to be gratuitous here, but it's the truth. How does anybody think this person is an intelligent person? Now, there might be a little bit of a nerve issue. She might be kind of socially uncomfortable. She might be smarter than we know. You never know. Some people, you know, just don't have the social skills or whatever to come across as confident or what have. I don't know. I don't know how you rise to the level of Vice President of the United States with that, but she did. But so I'll give her the benefit of the doubt that maybe she's just not as stupid as she appears, and it might be a mental problem otherwise that you know, I don't mean mental problem like mentally ill, but I mean, you know, a social skill issue. I don't know. But here's the side-by-side comparison of the Bill Whitaker interview and a proof that what happened here is that they edited this nonsensical answer with a previous soundbite in the interview to make her sound coherent and normal. That wasn't Bill Whitaker. That were the people who are handling the production of this post-production, who kind of reviewed it and said, oh, shoot, we can't have her sound this stupid. We're just going to give her another answer. Here's how it came down. Come on, my friends, you can do it. So, I don't know whether they've since taken this down on X or what they've done, because I'm looking at it from X.
But it seems that
Here we go.
Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
Well, Bill,
It's their first
the
answer.
work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region.
But it seems that
Okay,
Prime Minister
and so this is the second one where they put a new answer in.
Netanyahu is not listening.
We're not going to stop pursuing what is necessary for the United States to be clear about where we stand on the need for this war to end.
Unbelievable. And I don't know how they actually obtained these different versions. I don't know how they obtained that version. I don't know how anybody did it, unless it was leaked or whatever. And you know, the Trump team already demanded that they release the entirety of this interview. But it's funny how when the journalism world and when people in this situation are busted and are proved so corrupt that they dive for cover, and you don't get any transparency for them, even though they demand it from everybody else. Here's another example of journalistic malpractice and election interference as well, it seems. Last week, CBS Morning had this Tay Nishishi Coates on. His new book out called The Message about Israel and Palestinians. It was a 10-day trip based on his trip to the West Bank that this Coates character took. It only positions Palestinians as victims and as victims of Israeli racism. Tony Duckapel on CBS kind of said, he kind of called that out on the show when he was interviewing him.
I've been to the Israel-Palestine section of the book. It's the largest section of the book. And I have to say, when I read the book, I imagine if I took your name out of it, took away the awards and the acclaim, took the cover off the book, the publishing house goes away, the content of that section would not be out of place in the backpack of an extremist. And so then I found myself wondering,
wow, the content of that section would not be out of place in the backpack of an extremist. That's pretty hardcore coming from Tony Duckapel. But he's like, dude, you basically just made Israel's a permanent victim of
why does Ta-Nehisi Coates, who I've known for a long time, read his work for a long time, very
Palestinians.
Talented, smart guy, leave out so much? Why leave out that Israel is surrounded by countries that want to eliminate it? Why leave out that Israel deals with terror groups that want to eliminate it? Why not detail anything of the first and the second intifada, the cafe bombings, the bus bombings?
I mean, unbelievable. But guess what? After this, CBS News held a meeting and even hired people to kind of try and help people through therapy who were triggered by the interview. They said it did not meet their standards. They hung this guy out to dry for doing his job. There's your corrupt media. Two sides of it, especially CBS. This is the Allman Report on News Talk STL.
You're listening to the Allman Report on NewsTalkSTL.
Wake up, everybody. Time for the second hour of the Allman Report here on this Wednesday night. NewsTalkSTL, 101.9 and 94.1. Jamie Allman, really pleased and privileged to be with you. Just praying for all our friends down in Florida. And I mean our brothers and sisters of America down in Florida. And this hurricane is unbelievable. It's a monster. And so the tornadoes of today and the actual hurricane that's actually going to be a hurricane as it goes across the state, it's just unbelievable. So we are definitely thinking about our brothers and sisters down there in Florida tonight. All right. Donald Trump is great because, these people all do these 60 Minutes interviews and all this kind of stuff. So President Trump decided he's going to go on the Flagrant podcast with Andrew Schultz and Akash Singh. And like J.D. Vance when he was on with the Nelk brothers, these guys, both J.D. Vance and Donald Trump, love these freewheeling interviews. And because President Trump's really good at it. And also has a sense of humor and also has a brain. So he's good at this kind of stuff. Earlier, of course, you heard this manufactured Stephen Colbert, Kamala Harris, here, have a beer with me, because that's the judge of how we're going to. It's like, could you have a beer? And they break out these two beers. I mean, come on. It's just so staged and so dumb that nobody bought it. So, and the other good thing about Trump going on this podcast is a lot of young people watch it. So you're talking about people who are, Aiden's age, 20 years old, up through mid-30s, maybe even early 40s. So a lot of males watch it, though. It's a podcast that a lot of males are drawn to. A lot of females do, too, though. And so he's reaching an audience that isn't a mainstream media audience or anything else. And some funny stuff came out of it. Some good stuff came out of it. Some pretty serious stuff came out of it. So I'm going to bring you a few highlights here.
Elon interviewed me on something.
Yeah.
And I think they said 275 million hits or listeners.
That's a lot of people.
That was a record.
That's a nation. Yeah.
But it's a whole new, different way of
Can I ask you a question
getting the word out, right?
About Elon specifically, is he your favorite African-American?
He's a piece of work, I'll tell you. He's a great guy.
I mean, it's funny. That's funny. Because Elon Musk is South African. So, that was pretty good. You kind of got to be up on that. But most of these guys know Elon Musk is South African.
He's obviously a brilliant guy.
Yeah.
I mean, when I saw the rocket engines come back, I said, what is that? Like a couple of years ago, I've seen rockets go up and then they crash into the water.
Yeah. And by the way, it was Elon Musk's spacecraft that was taking these amazing pictures of the hurricane from space.
And I see the engines are coming back, and they're landing.
It's unbelievable.
They're landing.
It's Elon Musk's spacecraft that's going to go up and rescue those astronauts trapped on the International Space Station because their vehicle had to come back empty. The Boeing vehicle. So it's Elon Musk is going up there. There's not a peep of it in the news about that kind of heroic move.
And they land on a raft in the middle of the ocean someplace with a little dot, and they land right on the top of the spot.
And my wife can't parallel park.
I know. Most people can't. But no, he's great. But he's got a great heart. He was with me, as you know, on the other night.
Yeah.
And we were honoring a man who got killed at a rally. Corey, firefighter, great guy. And it was a beautiful evening. But Elon went out, and he loved the crowd. He loves the country.
Yeah.
And he's picked a side. A lot of people don't want to pick a side. I have a lot of people that are big supporters of me.
Yeah.
But they won't go all out. They can't.
They're scared.
Quite.
There's a
They're
cost.
Scared.
Yeah.
There's a cost.
And so Elon Musk has some balls, to be out there, kind of supporting President Trump, even though it comes at a certain level of risk. And, he said, I'm toast if Trump loses. But if Trump wins, which I think he's going to, Elon Musk goes into a different orbit, pardon the pun. Here's another one.
You have these children that are seemingly well-adjusted, successful, and I think, most importantly, they appear to like you.
Yeah.
Okay. I grew up in the city, and there's a lot of people who had like very wealthy parents, and like the kids kind of resent them. They're almost like waiting for them to like die, and they end up in like rehabs,
doing
and
drugs, God knows what. Yeah.
How do you raise them in the public eye where they, still become ambitious and successful?
So I do have good kids and 5 really wonderful children, and different, very different. Yeah, they are so different. But one thing that was in common that I did, I always used to say when I was with them or when they were leaving a room, I would drive them crazy. No drugs, no alcohol, no cigarettes. I would say that.
Did you say that to Don Jr.?
Yeah, Don's a little wild. He's a wild.
This is nice to be able to hear President Trump ask questions about his family. I know Melania's running around with that new book, and she's great too. And he's a dad. It's pretty cool.
He can be a little tough.
He told me a funny story.
Go ahead.
Okay. I talked to a bunch of people. I was trying to, prepare for this interview. Right. He told me a funny story. And he said to me, he goes, once he asked if he could have a couple of his friends over for New Year's. Was it New Year? No, it was July 4th.
Right.
On top of Trump Tower.
Right.
And you said yes. He's like, I want 5 friends. You're like, okay, I'm out of town. Go for it. He brings 200 people over to Trump Tower. Okay?
That's right.
Okay. He says that you weren't supposed to be there. You end up showing up. You hear some noise upstairs. You come up. You go, what the fuck is everybody doing here? Get the hell out of my house. He said he cleaned for the next 36 hours. And he said, to this day, you have never brought up that it even happened. And he said, I'm starting to believe it might not have happened. Yeah. So
he said that's all it happened.
Can you give him closure?
No, it happened. No, I can never give closure.
So anyway, he punished him for it and everything else. I'm just enjoying these stories. And this is what he's talking about in terms of the need to have an intelligent president.
If you have a smart president who knows, some things, if you had who knows how to deal, let's say, you're not going to have a problem with Russia. Russia would have never attacked Ukraine if I were president. I used to talk to Putin about it. I got along great with him. They would have never, ever done it. I ended his pipeline, I ended the pipeline called Nord Stream 2. Nobody ever heard of Nord Stream 2.
Yeah.
I said, are you building a pipeline going to Europe? Yeah. I said, I don't think so.
Yeah.
And I told, I got them together. I said, you mean we're defending you from Russia and you're paying them billions of dollars a month for oil? It's not going to work that way. And I ended it. And then when Biden came in, he gave it back. The biggest project they ever had, right? He gave it back. And then everyone said, Trump is friends with Putin. And so Putin would say, if you're my friend, I'd hate like hell to see you as my enemy. Think of it.
Yeah.
And I put a lot of sanctions on. But I got along with Russia. I get along with pretty much everybody.
It's exactly the kind of personality and vibe that President Trump had as a real estate guy. And that's one thing people don't understand about his personality and the kind of person that he is that he's going to work you. He's an affable guy, and he's a good guy, and he's a generous guy, and he's a deal maker and everything else. But he's gonna work you. He's gonna hold you accountable, and he's gonna have experiences with you. And it's always gonna. It's the weirdest thing. The people who talk about being with Donald Trump is that he is like a super loyal guy. He'll take good care of you, everything else, but he's never in love with you, so to speak. Like he never is going to worship you, and he's never going to be a patsy for you or anything like that. It's always really right down to business. And you notice even in his interviews that he does, even with these guys, he's kind of all business. He's like, no, I'll tell you exactly what this is. And I'll tell you exactly what this is. I'll tell you exactly what happened. And the thing I really like about Donald Trump in these situations is that he's very detailed. It's interesting how the news media, when they watch some of his rallies and things like that, they always say, well, it's a meandering presentation. It's a this, it's a that. He was meandering. It's like, no. He's telling you a story that has details in it. And details to Donald Trump are really super important. as you've been able to gather here and as you've been able to gather when you've heard of it interviewed before. The details are super important, and people who are snobs, everybody else call it minutia or whatever, but this stuff's important. When you hear him talk about helping communities in terms of community banks, and you hear him talk about regulation, environmental regulation, when you hear him talk, remember when he talked about toilets, and he's like, people can't have to flush their toilets 5 times. Well, that's a detail that's true, and everybody lives with it and deals with it. And the media's like, oh, gosh, he's just meandering. He's just, blathering on about toilets or something like that. That's like, no, that's what we talk about. That's our life. And so when he's talking about this pipeline, he's very detailed about it. And he also talks about how, I maintain relationships with these people. But they know my relationship is not a one-way street, and they know my relationship isn't just me giving them everything, and I'm going to hold them accountable, and they know that.
Actually, the tougher they were, the better I did with them. That's a good thing, not a bad thing, because the other ones are easier to handle. But the ones that I got along with, and they're also the bigger threats. I got along very well with President Xi of China, but when COVID came, I was not happy with him because it came out of the labs. I mean, they released it from accidentally, I believe. A lot of people would say it wasn't an accident, but they got hit very hard. They got hit as hard as anybody in the world.
Anyway, he says, I think it was leaked, but that's okay, purposely. But when he talks about, hey, the people I got along with the best were the toughest people, were the meanest people. And that's a measure of Donald Trump's personality, and that he considers that to be a big challenge. And also he has guts. And also he has the confidence because he's a beta. He's an alpha male. Where all these other betas in the Republican Party can't stand this because they've never been able to pull this off. They've never been able to pull off negotiations with tough people. They shuffle around and whine and throw their hands up or shove a bunch of troops someplace or whatever. But Trump's an alpha, and he knows he can handle the tough guys, and that's a pretty good measure of his kind of ability and his personality, is that the tougher guys were the ones he got along with the best. And that's a thing. And here's one of the funnier parts. And he's revealing the one ability that Joe Biden has. It's pretty funny.
Over the last week, I have to, we talk about funny or sad. I think it's more sad than funny.
Yeah.
He has one ability I don't have.
Yeah.
He sleeps. He can sleep. This guy goes on a beach and he lays down on one of those, 6 ounce, they weigh 6 ounces and he can't lift it. Yeah. They're meant for children.
Yeah.
Young people and old people to lift.
Yeah.
They're aluminum, hollowed aluminum.
Yeah.
They weigh very little, and he can't lift. And somebody convinced him he looks good in a bathing suit. And when you're 82, typically bathing suits aren't going to make you look great. You're not going to be enhanced. Yeah. All right? It's just one of those things. I can't be sure about that, but typically you don't.
Depends what he's packing. He could.
I don't know what the hell he's packing, but I don't want to know either. I don't know, but he has an ability to fall asleep while on camera. He can lie down on one of those things, and in minutes, he's stone cold out.
How does he do it?
And he's got cameras because he's the president, so they have cameras on him.
Yeah.
And then they show him sleeping on the beach.
Yeah.
You'll never see me sleeping in front of camera.
How do we?
I mean, you'll never see him sleeping in front of a camera. You barely see Donald Trump without a tie, for crying out loud, ever, anywhere. So there's a lot to this bit on this podcast that I really love, and I always love it when Donald Trump is able to kind of show his personality and what makes him the kind of man and leader that he is. I love these kinds of moments. I can listen to him all day. I hope you didn't mind me taking a little time just kind of diving into it, because I want you to hear it if you didn't already hear it. And so, he's good at this, and he's a real guy. He's an authentic guy. And he's right. You'll never catch him. I mean, he's just is one of these guys who seems, even though people call him reckless and blah and all this kind of stuff, he seems to be a pretty buttoned up dude in a lot of ways, whether it be in disciplining the kids or in what he's going to do in front of a camera or in dealing with tough leaders, negotiating, that kind of stuff. He seems to be a pretty proper dude, and I like that, and I like to hear this side of his personality. And he couldn't have chosen a better Robin to his Batman as far as I'm concerned, because J.D. Vance is just absolutely incredible. And you're going to hear on the other side of this, J.D. Vance answering the question of why black people should vote for the Vance-Trump ticket, the Trump-Vance ticket. And I got to tell you, J.D. Vance sounded a lot like me when I've explained to people, about why they don't reach out to the black vote. I can't wait to bring you that because it's money. In the meantime, I'm going to let you know it's Polytime. Thank you to my friends at Polytime for their support of free, common sense, conservative radio. Carvin Hughes, he's a U.S. Marine. He's an awesome dude. Once a Marine, always a Marine. And now this veteran-owned and operated business is going to help you with precision concrete leveling. Restoration services are available as well. This is a polyjacking Polytime is a much more effective, longer lasting solution compared to mudjacking, which I know you've heard about. They can handle all your concrete problems, that sinking or whatever it is in the driveway, steps, anything else they can help you with. There's no job too big or too small. Totally free estimates. All you have to do is go to itspolytime.com. It's polytime.com, and you can see exactly what they're able to do for you. They have some great programs for you coupon-wise and everything else. Just ask them to see about their coupon discounts, and they'll just hand you one. And so let them know you appreciate how much they support free, common sense, conservative radio here at the Allman Report on News Talk STL.
You're listening to the Allman Report on NewsTalkSTL.
Yes, indeed you are, everybody. It is the Allman Report. Happy Wednesday evening to all of you and yours. It's Common Sense Radio, and Jamie Allman here with you. NewsTalkSTL.com/Allman is the podcast place for all of you as well. So J.D. Vance is really good at this, and he's at a rally, and J.D. Vance has taken to doing some pretty great things sometimes at these rallies, and he'll take questions, which I love it. I love it when he's just kind of throws these questions out there. It's kind of unique to his particular brand, and it's certainly nothing Tim Walz or Kamala Harris would ever do. So if anything, Americans, even when I just showed you that, played you those clips from Donald Trump, if anything, Americans are picking up on something about the Trump-Vance ticket, and that is that it is pretty transparent, pretty real. They're open, and they're real people, and they answer questions. You know, clearly it's one of the things that helped Vance in that debate is that he actually had to answer a lot of the questions he was asked in the debate because he goes out there and spreads his wings a little bit and builds that muscle, works that muscle. And Walz is just a lazy person and didn't do it, and he looked terrible. Anyway, this is an interesting thing that we've been following as conservatives for a long time. So the question is, like, what is he going to do for black Americans? And Donald Trump always said this back when he was running in 2015 to 16 and beyond. He said, I'm going to do for black Americans what I'm doing for white Americans and Hispanic Americans, because if you're an American here in this country, you have pretty similar desires. You want safe communities. You want great jobs. You want a solid border. You want to be safe, as I said earlier. You want to prosper. You want to maybe buy a boat. I don't know, but there's a black American has no real different needs than a white American or a Hispanic American, with the exception of a few places which might be linked to their geographical area. So a black American in Detroit, and I'll let Vance go ahead and answer this, would have maybe different needs than a white American in, Santa Fe, New Mexico. I don't know. Whatever. But so sometimes those differences are unique to communities, which is why when President Trump went up to Detroit with Ben Carson, famously that one time where he said, "What do you have to lose?" He was promoting the recreation of community banks. Community banks help people get loans for small businesses and equipment and those kinds of things. And the bigger the banks got, as in terms of the smaller banks going away and then all these other banks consolidating or just leaving like three big banks, they tell people to take a hike. You don't have the relationship. And community banks help farmers. They help people in the inner city who want to build businesses, all those kinds of things, because they know who these people are in the communities. Anyway, that's what President Trump was doing when he went to Detroit, which had a specific need for a resurgence of the community bank, much like he would go to Erie, Pennsylvania, where they also do, where a lot of farmers who buy equipment, meet payroll, all that kind of stuff with community banks. Anyway, J.D. Vance had a great answer, and this is, again, another example of how we're dealing with a very, very highly intelligent couple of guys here. We're hearing these are guys that have answers, and they're understandable. And here's J.D. Vance.
Senator Vance, Ken Coleman from MichiganAdvance.com. Detroit is 77% African American. The state is 14% African American. Why should African American Michiganders vote for the Trump-Vance ticket?
We've got a great number of black Americans in this crowd right now. They could probably answer that question better than I could, but...
And by the way, you notice, I noticed this, that he doesn't say African American, which is ridiculous anyway, because these people in Detroit, they're not African at all. So, but the fact of the matter is, he doesn't try to play that little game where a bunch of white squishes are always trying to suck up the black people by calling them African American, when most black people don't call them themselves African Americans. But anyway.
But without calling everybody up here, because I'm a politician, I don't like to share the microphone with anybody as much as I like them. What I think they would agree with is, number one, Donald Trump wants to bring back public safety and an economy that brings prosperity for everybody. Good wages for good jobs.
Right on.
That's the Trump promise, and I think that's a great promise to black families in Michigan and to everybody else. Here's something else. I mean, there is this idea in the media, and I don't know where it came from, that somehow black Americans don't believe in public safety in this country. Well, we know whether you're Democrat, Republican, or independent, black Americans do care about public safety in this country. They want to empower our law enforcement officers to do their job. Of course, do it respectfully and make sure we've got good relationships between police and community, but we can have a good relationship between police and the communities they serve while we lock up the violent criminals and keep everybody safe in the process.
Right on.
I think that's very possible.
Yep.
And look, I mean, the story of black Americans, especially in the city of Detroit, is actually very similar to the story of Appalachian white Americans who came from West Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee. We moved to places like Detroit, black and white together, because there were good jobs for people who were willing to work hard and play by the rules. And it wasn't always perfect, but for a generation in this country, people, black and white, worked together, raised their families, built things in this country, and created prosperity for the entire country. And if you... That was the story, by the way, in the steel mill that my grandfather worked in for almost 40 years. You had black folks and white folks living together, working together, and they again, it wasn't always perfect, but it worked. You know why it worked? Because we had good jobs for people who were willing to work hard and play by the rules.
Want to stop there just for a second and draw you back to our own experience here in St. Louis, because you guys do remember a time in this country, in this community, where we had the Corvette plant and Carter Carburetor right up there off of Grand and that area up there off of 70, which is now considered by some people to be the ghetto. But back in the day, back in the 70s, and I know for a fact because I lived in U City, which was kind of in that North Corridor, so to speak, and I went to school with a lot of black kids, and their fathers worked at Carburetor. Their fathers worked at the Corvette plant. They were middle-class kids. And so those went away. Obviously, it went away because the carburetor part went away for obvious reasons, as you all know. But still, those were plants that served a need at the time. And we're not doing any of that anymore. So much of that is overseas and everything else. No, you don't have to go back to building carburetors. No, going back to building Corvettes would be nice. But you can go keep those plants retooled and moving around with a continued prosperous economy. And instead what we had was just a dwindling economy that went away because Republicans and Democrats sold the working man down the river. And now that area of North St. Louis is just what we call North St. Louis. It's not a prosperous place anymore. A lot of abandoned homes, all that kind of thing. So he's right about that, about how there was a time in this nation where there wasn't really a real distinction between urban and suburban all over the place. There were plenty of places where blacks and whites lived and worked together. And it worked because there was a element of American-made prosperity going on. And that's what J.D. Vance is talking about.
The destruction of the manufacturing economy in the state of Michigan has been disastrous for black Americans, and it's been disastrous for a lot of middle-class white Americans, too. We can make things in this country again. We can build things in the United States of America again. And when we do, it's going to bring prosperity to black and white alike.
Yeah. And so it's very clear what his answer is there. And that we, honestly, blacks and whites have the same needs and desires, and it all boils down to really simple economics. And once we destroyed the manufacturing base in this country by allowing our Democrat, Republican parties to sell us down the river through terrible and crappy trade deals and everything else, we basically just lost that interracial middle class that we had, that existed in Detroit, that existed in St. Louis here, that existed in all kinds of cities around the country. And so, to me, you can solve a problem pretty easily by going back to the drawing board and bringing back manufacturing to this country. It's not hard to do. The Republican and Democrat parties always act like it is because they don't want to do it, because they want to keep you and your beaks constantly open so they can come and help you. It's bull crap. And I'm glad J.D. Vance answered the question in that fashion. All right, coming up, the great Doug Giles with a special Wednesday night appearance, because I want to ask him about this so-called evangelical vote, or the Christian vote, that might be staying at home, according to the propagandists in Pew. We'll see about that from the great Doug Giles straight ahead here on the Allman Report on News Talk STL.
You're listening to the Allman Report on News Talk STL.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Allman Report here at News Talk STL. Jamie Allman here, pleased and privileged to be with you on this Wednesday night. And by now you've heard what I consider to be propaganda. It's designed really to suppress the vote, and that's some propaganda is used to change minds and do all this kind of stuff. Other propaganda is used to demoralize people, and by now you probably have heard, because every single solitary mainstream news organization is kind of like wagging its finger going, we're hearing that Christians are going to stay home this year. Christians are going to stay home this election. And first of all, I can't believe it. And secondly, I can't wait to hear what the great Doug Giles, DougGiles.org, ClashDaily.com has to say about it as well. Thank you for the special Wednesday night appearance, brother. How you doing?
Kicking ass, Jamie. How are you, big dog?
Good, good. Hey, by the way, I wanted to ask a quick question. This is just more of a question about wordage. The term evangelical, are you a fan of that word, or like where'd that word ever really come from?
Yeah, it just means somebody who believes that they're saved by faith through grace, and it's not part of their good works, that it's by Christ alone, to his glory alone. So it's got rich history. I mean, it's turned into kind of like, these 3-teeth IQ of 50, Bible thumpers who are fundamentalists. And you know what fundamentalist stands for, don't you, Jamie? No fun, mostly dumb, and quite mental. But historically, it's not a bad moniker at all to fly over one's castle. And so, yeah, but again, like all things, it's like, eesh. Because I know Catholics, man, you're one of them, that don't dig on, the hash that the Pope's smoking and selling. And when they tell people that they're Catholic, everybody thinks, oh, you're for child molestation and gay clergy and trans. It's like, no, I'm not. You can't put me in that kind of group. So that's why I keep it simple, Jamie. I'm a simple man. I like Leonard Skinner. I love lemonade, strawberry pie, and I've just followed Jesus as much as I can to my own ability. And all the organized and disorganized religions, basically, you can, in Christian love, of course, kiss my holy skinny backside.
Well, Doug, do you know any Christians who are not voting this time around?
Yeah, not really, man. And, when you were regaling me coming into this segment about how there's a poll out that says, oh, the Christians are sitting this one out. It's like, no, that's bullshit. You know who's filling those stadiums? You know how many Christians rocked up to Butler, PA? Like nearly 100,000 people. I guarantee that a huge swath of those were Jesus, God, and country-loving Christians that showed up. So I'm sure that there's, the rare, I'm talking about a dodo-like Christian that's woke and, maybe like Kamala Harris because she brings a vibe to the situation. Yeah, I'm sure there's a couple of numbnuts like that out in the evangelical milieu, but the preponderance, Jamie, the great preponderance of folks who are believers, they're voting for frickin' Trump. Even if he does mean tweets, Jamie, if he does mean tweets, because they believe that safe streets are more important than mean tweets.
Yeah, well, no doubt about it. And it just seems to me that even if you are Christian and you decide not to vote, you might as well hand in your Christian card because it absolutely is called for by the Bible to do your duty in that sense, because your leadership determines the trajectory of your compass and the godly pursuits that you want to pursue in your country. So how could you possibly say you're not going to vote?
Yeah, and they come up with, and again, there's some pockets of them out there. They're airy-fairy. They're like, well, since we're citizens of a heavenly kingdom, it doesn't matter what's going down here because we're going up there, and this doesn't matter. And I'm like, the hell it doesn't.
Yeah.
You don't think peace in America matters? You don't think shutting down a porous border that has more glaring holes in it than Rosie O'Donnell's pantyhose after she tried to high step a barbed wire fence after a 5 p.m. beating? You don't think that matters? You don't think that, seeing fentanyl, poured into this country by evil satanic devil worshiping drug cartels, that doesn't matter, dumb Christian. And I don't get that kind of stuff where you're, so heavenly minded, Jamie, that you know earthly good. And we've got that freedom afforded to us in this great experiment in self-governance, the right to vote. And man, they don't have that in Tehran. So any dumb Christian who's thinking, that it don't matter or they're too spiritual to do it, you just wait till people are hung in front of your church, just like happened in the movie The Patriot, where Reverend Oliver, he was like, we're not going to get involved in this tawdry stuff with Snaggletooth King George. Well, you did once they started hanging your congregants right in front of your church and your bar. And then old Reverend Oliver, Jamie, he said this. He said, I guess, Mr. Allman, sometimes shepherds need to tend to wolves and not just the sheep.
Yeah. Wow. You're right, man. And so it's interesting that this particular, I don't trust the Pew operation anyway. But anyway, it's interesting that the poll itself, it was prefaced with another part of the poll that showed that like 81% of evangelical Christians support President Trump and a smaller, like 16% support Kamala Harris, but that the Christians aren't going to vote. It's like, that doesn't even compute how they could say in one part of the poll, yeah, we support President Trump, but we're not going to go vote. So it's all set up, in my opinion, to kind of demoralize. And that was even prefaced earlier, weeks ago, with this idea somehow that President Trump betrayed all the pro-life people. Here's a guy who made sure that Roe versus Wade was finally overturned, and somehow he doesn't have pro-life cred.
Yeah, again, I think, we're in the wash cycle now, Jamie. 27 days out. They're gonna come up, with all kinds of weird bull crap to try to stave off this red tidal wave that's coming. I think it's nonsense. Again, I'm on big, and I'm not trying to say I'm a big dog or anything like that, but I know people, Jamie, in Christendom, and I would say not only are the evangelicals frickin' voting for Trump, they're giddy.
Yeah.
They got on cheerleader outfits, man. They're the ones that are driving their frickin' Ford F-250 with a 50-foot Trump flag coming out of the back of it. They're the ones that are on those big boat parades going up and down, whatever lake it is in the Midwest. That's them.
Yeah.
The good-looking girls in the bikinis, they go to church. They're evangelicals. They're voting. They're not going to vote for Kamala and Tim Walz. They're not going to sit this one out because they can smell absolute disaster. And hey, man, thank God that pastors will go there in the pulpit and say, don't vote for a Marxist. Okay, he cheated on his wife a couple times and he's got mean tweets, but he freaking loves America. And, and that's what swayed. And again, I think anybody who reads the scripture and's got a frickin' lick of sense, they know unrighteous leadership and they know righteous leadership, whatever their backgrounds, like Trump's, when some of the Christians like, he imbibed deeply in the superfluity of naughtiness. Like, so what? So did David, so did Abraham, so did Moses, so did Samson, so did Rahab. She was a whore. And the list just goes on and on and on of the weird critters that God uses. But I think, again, the Bible Belt, Bible Church, take scripture serious, boom, there's where freedom will ring. And these people represent a rat cage strapped onto our face in an Orwellian hellscape.
Yeah. Well, you wrote a book about this. Well, you wrote a couple, actually, because I know you did the John the Baptist book.
In 2019, I wrote Would Jesus Vote for Trump? Oh, my God, man. We had some fun interviews off that and some great critiques. But, so we took 28 salient issues that confronts the Christian voter. And obviously, Jesus wouldn't vote for anybody because he's the Son of God. But from a biblical standpoint, the Christian can take great comfort that from a policy aspect, and then now we've got 4 years to see what he actually implemented, because everybody said, he's going to turn, he's going to flip-flop, he's going to become a Democrat, and he didn't do it.
Yeah.
He didn't do it. And he did that amongst great internal and external opposition, impeachments, lawsuits, all kinds of stuff. And so, I tried to put, and I think I did it very well, put the Christian's mind at ease. Like, this is not the Antichrist. If he's a narcissist, Jamie, if he is, and we all are to some extent, then the thing that he's going to do is make certain that America doesn't suck with his name tied to it. He's going to labor hard to buoy, all those things that makes America that shining city on a hill. He's not going to turn it into some, wretched third world country. So again, from a biblical standpoint, common sense standpoint, which you always bring to the table, allay the Christian's fear. And again, I tell Christians all the time when they bring up his past, it's like, I'm not frickin' electing a pastor. I'm electing a president. I want a businessman, a successful one. And don't go around talking about Trump's past, because Jesus sees in secret. He says, if you look to lust, you've done it. He said, if you hate, that's just the same as murder. So, just like Dennis Miller said one time after Jimmy Swaggart's sex scandal, he says, he that hath an empty hand, let him throw the first stone.
Yeah. Well, I was just about to say, I wonder what it is in people that they believe what the consequences of their judgment of somebody based on their life will have on their own life. So I'm trying to figure out, like, what's the use of trying to make somebody pay for whatever sins you describe when your belief system is that that's all going to be in God's hands anyway, eventually. So I don't understand how people think they're going to further their goals or their trip to heaven or whatever by deciding they were going to lash out for somebody because of some amoral situation that they've determined to be amoral or what have you. They've judged to be that way.
Yeah, I think it's funny when you get these big old bubbas and, they drive like a Corolla and they're broke and they smell like Crisco. And then they're like, I can't believe Donald Trump would do blah, 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 blah to Karen McDougal and Stormy Daniels. Like, dude, he's a billionaire. He's got Scandinavian models lined up, for half a mile for him. He's not saddled with the Holy Spirit. He's not a saint. What would you do, Jamie? If I was a non-Christian billionaire and I'm rolling in dough, I'd probably be tempted.
Yeah. Well,
you know what I mean?
And I also think it's pretty clear you have seen a big old Bubba in a Corolla, haven't you? Because otherwise you can't just make that up. So those people do exist.
Yep. French fry wrappers on the dash. You got small animals running in the back. You don't even know what's in there and stuff. But again, they're I know a couple of people that are very serious Christians, and they will not vote for Trump no matter what.
I know. Yeah.
And I've tried to argue them, into the fold and stuff. But I think the Pew paper, man, I think it should be used to line a parrot cage.
Yeah.
And I think it's specious due, because all those major rallies, I'd say the majority of them believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, and they trust him and him alone for their salvation. So
yeah,
it's bull crap.
All right, brother. Well, listen, it's always great to have you on. Thanks for the laughs, but also for the introspection. And Lionhearted is that book you guys have to get for Christmas or anything else, because there's plenty available.
So it's Making Young Christian Males Rowdy Biblical Men. And if you've got a tinker pot in your home, maybe not give this to him directly because it might offend him, but kind of leave it in a common way.
Yeah.
In a common area, and he might get curious and pick it up and grow a pair of cojones for Christ.
Right on. His new books and his new art is right there at DougGiles.org, right, brother? And,
right on.
And you've got plenty of stock in there. You're ready to go. And now's the time to get it, because you wait a month and everybody else has got it. So make sure you hop on it right there. Doug Giles, thanks a lot, brother. Appreciate you, man.
Thank you. Yeah, man. Stay rowdy.
All right. You too. Yeah, that Lionheart is a great book for young men, even for that matter, young ladies, too, because they can be lion-hearted as well, you know. You never know. All right. And by the way, I love it. Whenever Doug makes references to, like, caricatures of people, you know he's seen those. I mean, you have seen that Big Bubba in a Corolla. For whatever reason, it's a Corolla. I don't know why, but the descriptions are outstanding. Ethan Valencia, thanks so much for your hard work today as well. And you guys, thank you for listening. Pray for our brothers and sisters in Florida tonight. Love you. Appreciate you. See you tomorrow.